Can you talk about the story behind your IC7 or senior staff promo?
So I got roped into this project to count the number of people using one of Facebook's property. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but in the process of doing that, that was around 2015 or so, we had to do a bunch of data processing. We had to do a bunch of machine learning and inference. And the tools we had were just icky. They didn't really work well. Like the developer experience was horrible. We would have to work within one data pipelining framework and then move to another thing to do the machine learning and the inference and then go back and forth. And I was like, this is not fun. I'm wasting so much time just going back and forth. So I started building this little library that essentially let you do data pipelining within the machine learning orchestration framework. And at first that was just me writing a bunch of helper scripts for myself because I didn't want to have to go back and forth. I didn't want to have to deal with landing code in two different code bases and synchronizing all of that. I was like, I want my code to live in one thing, do all of my thing in this code base, and then I'll be happy. But in the process of doing that, I just started tinkering a little. And I was like, why is it that whenever I need to write a data pipeline, I have to write the same boilerplate over and over again? It's always the same thing. Why can't I set those things to be the defaults? And so, I kind of whittled away a lot of the boilerplate that you had to write. And so I put together this library where if you were building a data pipeline in the machine learning orchestration framework, FB Learner Flow, what would take you, say, 300 lines of code in the canonical data pipelining system would probably take you 20 lines of code. You had this escape hatch to add all the configuration, but by default, it did the right thing. And at that point, I was hooked. I was like, I am building a thing that can make people's lives easier. Forget about this counting number of people on Facebook. Other people are going to figure that out. I want to help those people move faster. And so then I started looking at other things where people were wasting time. And at the time, if you were a data scientist, as a product analyst, if you were a machine learning engineer, the way you worked was by building or setting up your own tools. Half of the company was using Jupyter for notebooks. The other half of the company was using RStudio, which uses this statistical programming language R. And the way you would set that up is you would look at one of 10 different wikis that were all outdated, and you would have to set that up either on a dev server or on your machine, a lot of manual steps. And I was like, that's kind of silly. We should just make it so everyone has a Jupyter instance running if they want, and they don't have to configure it. And so I just kind of started building that. I remember telling my manager, it was probably February. I was like, hey, this is the beginning of the half. I'm going to take 2-3 months to just hack on this. And if it doesn't pan out come, April, I'll just find another project to save the half and not get to need most. And so I started hacking on this, roped in a couple more people, and we built what eventually became the very first version of Bento, which is the notebook platform based on Jupyter that's used all across the company. And at first, Bento was really, really dumb. It was just a script that would set up Jupyter for you. But we had this vision behind it. What if, instead of just being this external tool that you have to set up that doesn't communicate with anything at the company, we integrated that better within the rest of the tooling? What if you could just open a browser, type Bento, and now you have a notebook that's running? And you already have the libraries that are built within the company that you can reuse instead of having to figure out how to do that manually. What if you could have other programming languages? Eventually, people start hack into that. And so over the course of about a year or so, we started putting this system together. A big thing that I worked on after that was building Bento on demand, where instead of having a dev server where we would set up the system for you, you could just request an on-demand instance. You could work on that and then release it. Because we're doing that for development environment. And we're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You don't have to maintain a dev server. And so in the process of doing that, I helped lead the development of the platform. But more importantly, I put the team together. I transitioned into a tech lead manager role, started building a team. And the way I built the team was hiring people who were very excited about the tooling world. Actually, I just hired a bunch of people who were already building tooling on the side in their spare time. And I was like, hey, do you want this to be your full-time job? Sounds like you like to do this thing. It's super impactful. Do you want to do this full-time? And so, I brought in like a bunch of like amazing people. So with team, like 6, 7, 8 people. And so I got promoted to TLM2, mostly on my IC work and the vision I had for Bento.
And TLM2, for people who are outside the company, is equivalent to senior manager, which is equivalent to senior staff engineer in the industry. And when you hear these great stories of new infrastructure or tooling that everyone takes for granted today, what I want to know is, what is the step-by-step process on how you actually get the tooling from an idea to something that everyone is using?
So for Bento, the notebook platform, the answer is we didn't really try to get adoption within people's existing workflows. What I did was twofold. One, we targeted Bootcamp and Data Camp. So Bootcamp and Data Camp for non-Facebookers is where the thing you go through when you onboard at the company. And we just went to Data Camp and we told everyone who was working with data, this is the way you set up your developer environment. You just use this thing. Or you can also just like go do it manually if you want. But you can also just like type this one word and you have your developer environment. The company was growing like crazy at the time, right? And so when you have this like amount of insane growth and, the company is going to say like double in size within like a year or two, you get your growth from like all of those newcomers who don't know the legacy systems. And then you get the stragglers because everyone else around them then use the new system. So that was like a lot of the growth strategy behind Bento. The other thing we did with Bento was provide support and maintenance for the legacy systems. And so, we built trust with users that way. So if you were installing Jupyter by yourself, you could go to that group that was unmonitored before us, and we would provide help and we would provide support. And then over time, after building that trust, we would start encouraging people and be like, yeah, this like thing you want to do, I can give you a recipe that's going to take 25 steps to do that. Or we've actually built that in Bento. It doesn't really change your workflow. It'll just make your life easier. You'll move to that. So to summarize, step one, find an easy way of getting a bunch of users because network effects work. Step two, for the people who are on the legacy systems, just provide value to them.
That's super interesting because when I think of these developer offerings, I just always assume that you're going to have to influence a group of people that is using something today to switch off of something. In this particular case, in a growing company, there's this whole new user base. It's like all these people coming in. They're deciding from a fresh slate. And it sounds like your offering was a superior product in a sense. So it was a pretty easy sell.
And then the other thing we did too was go to, Alex Schultz, who's now the CMO of the company, but I was head of analytics at the time, and Brady Lauback. And we just told them, hey, we know that there's a lot of pain within your teams. We want to help. We think that this is the first step. And, I remember Brady saying, yeah, this is a good first step. There's like those like 20 other things you need to go fix. I was like, okay, let's take it one step at a time. And let's start talking more. There was no team at the time really building tools for data science and machine learning. And so this is when I actually ended up leaving the core data science team. And I reorged myself into the dev infra organization to start that team really focused on data developer tools.
Yeah, at the beginning of the story, you mentioned you took on some performance system risk. You literally told your manager, hey, I'm going to take on and build something that has a lot of potential, but also it might flop entirely. And then we can scramble to figure out performance so that, you don't get a below meets all rating. I'm curious because at that time, the industry was not as intense when it comes to churning out short-term results. Do you think that trying to do something like that today would be more difficult? And do you have any advice on more generally how to take on risk to pursue these higher rewards?
I think the consequences of underperforming now are more drastic than they were 10 years ago, for sure. I think the strategies when you want to take risk is the same. Make sure you're on the same page with your hierarchy and your manager. At the end of the day, we are all evaluated based on our expectations. If you're not aligned on what is expected of you with your manager, then that is a problem. Now, I was on a team whose job was to provide help with data, as data consultant in a way, right? Now, the thing I was building was tooling and infrastructure, not at all data to consulting. So the first thing I did was like, hey, manager, I'm not going to do what my job is and what the team is doing because I think there's an opportunity there. Are you okay with me doing this? Can we make it so, we carve out 2-3 months for me to go explore that and make that part of my expectation? If it pans out, great. If it doesn't pan out, well, I was expected to go explore this. It was a calculated risk. We all agreed as a team, my manager, my skip, myself, that like that was a thing I was going to do. And at that point, there's an agreement. This is the job you're going to do. Everyone is on the same page. I think it is a lot riskier to go and do your own thing. You lock yourself in a room, do your thing for 3 months, show up and you're like, I did this thing. And then everyone's like, yeah, but no one knew you were doing this thing. Over communicate, I think, is really the strategy I would recommend. And also be ready to hear no. Like I was very lucky to have a manager that said, yeah, I think it's risky, but it makes sense. Go do that. I've had, instances later on in my career where I wanted to go do a thing and I tried building that consensus. And what I was told was, no, don't do that.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. If you thought it was interesting, it's part of a longer conversation, which you can find right here, right now. And as always, if you have any feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. You can leave a comment on YouTube. I read every single one that I get.